Have you ever had to wrestle with the trauma from your past? It's that lingering sensation of pain or discomfort that suddenly takes a hold, even when you thought you had moved on from it. It's absurd, right? Trauma isn't a box neatly organized memories that fade with time. Instead, it's like a switch in the brain that can get flipped on and on again, where on sometimes feels like just a seemingly happy, normal life. And for people with anxious attachment style, the discomfort of unexpected emotional upheaval can feel especially amplified. This is because anxious attachers not only have the propensity for upswings and downswings themselves, but also have a heightened sense for any hints or threats within the environment that they're in. These are sort of like the canaries in the coal mine in terms of emotional turbulence. And by understanding the way trauma works, you can begin to dismantle the power it has over you and regain this control of your emotional well-being. Now, this journey is about growth and compassion and ultimately finding a sense of peace. Those with anxious attachment style may need to learn to self-soothe and make healthier coping strategies a part of their life. I empower people to overcome their challenges of mental health and trauma and attachment style. I believe in the transformative power of knowledge and self-awareness. But here's the thing, the impact of trauma can be easily dismissed by society, and this tendency, coupled with the stigma of actually asking for help, can slow the healing process. But guess what? You're not here to conform. You're breaking free from these limitations imposed by ignorance. And if you're anxiously attached, it helps to reject the idea that you need regular doses of external validation from other people. Instead, work on finding your way to internal strength. Dr. Julie E. Hanks says, healing is reclaiming your emotional well-being. Have you ever experienced a wave of emotions that seem to come out of nowhere, triggered by an event that on the surface really has nothing to do with your past? If you've experienced this sudden rush of anxiety or sadness or even rage, you're not alone. The reality is that trauma can bubble up to the surface when we least expect it, affecting us in mundane moments and rewire our brains with a reset button that we cannot control. Trauma isn't simply a memory that fades over time. It's a complex web of emotions, sensations, and behaviors that typically lie dormant only to be awakened by a seemingly unrelated trigger. This phenomenon is rooted in what happens to our brains when we don't heal from what we've been through. And trauma doesn't get stored in the brain like a typical memory does. It's as if a silent film were playing in the background of our mind, with the images and sounds influencing our emotional responses without realizing it. Now, for someone with anxious attachment style, the triggers can be especially potent, and they're often linked to abandonment or rejection. And if we think about it, even for just a couple seconds, it's not hard to understand why. At our most fundamental level, each of us has this unshakable need to know that we're not going to be thrown away or turned against. And for people with anxious attachment style, grappling with the way their attachment style meshes with the trauma can be a vital part in decreasing the intensity of the emotional response. And for many, this comes out of the blue. And I realize it takes courage to confront what most of us would rather leave in a dusty corner in our memories, but our pasts aren't going away, and with a little work we can come to understand how they shape our present and our future. To understand and tackle trauma with anxious attachment style demands a complete transformation. It means actively doing something about those default responses to make them work for us instead of against us. It means seeking support, practicing self-compassion, and pushing back against these society narratives about trauma that we have heard all too often, because it is our pathway back to emotional wellness.